Hey, welcome back everybody. Today we're exploring the hidden code between entropy and life. How do we reconcile the fact that the second law of thermodynamics tells us that everything goes towards disorder, towards entropy, towards higher states of dissipation, and yet we see all this beautiful life and structures and us. And I've always wondered why we think that we're separate from the rest of the universe. Why do we say that life is sentient, that we have the intelligence of humans? And how do we reconcile that with the creative intelligence of the universe, which is where we came from? So let's see if we can move over to the fire pit zone. It's a little bit chilly in here today. So how do we reconcile this apparent paradox between the fact that the laws of thermodynamics, the second one, tells us that everything goes towards disorder, and yet we see all this order and structure around us? This is Nebula, of course, our physics cat, and she likes to get away with things when we're not looking. And so I thought for the longest time as to why is it that there seems to be a separation between what we would call, let's say, the intelligence of life or humans, and how it is that planets get formed when the sun does its thing. Why is it that storms and tectonic plates occur when the Earth is doing its thing? Why is it that we build airplanes and watches when humans are doing their thing? Is there a common thread there? And today we have answers for this. So let's go ahead and go to the board. Well, we do have answers today in ODC, Optimally Dissipative Configuration. And what that simply means is that it is the common denominator of how and why humans do everything that they do, how we are built, how we set up our day, how we are here ultimately because we're helping the gradients of the Earth equalize, and that's another way of saying dissipating. And of course, we have a formula. So the ultimate configuration, whether it's us or let's say your commute to work or how your kitchen is laid out, all break down to this simple formula. And we will find that in anything that we do, and whether it's us doing something or the original molecules and building blocks of life, what happens is that given their constraints, the universe will always pick the argument of the maximum, which means the best, the more dissipative of all of the options for producing entropy. Now that might be a mouthful at first, but it is the way by which we can see that we're doing exactly what the rest of the universe is doing. So for example, your kitchen, it's not set up completely randomly. It's organized in such a way that you will be able to do what you need to do as efficiently as possible. You don't have the refrigerator in a different room and the oven in a different room. And very similarly, the original building blocks of life, who were all kind of like in a mishmash, and with entropy looking for the most downhill way to dissipate itself, energy and matter, structures spontaneously emerge, and that is the intelligence of the universe. And the reason I chose optimally dissipative configuration is because it is the most common denominator. So for optimally, for example, we might use the words the best, the dominant, the ultimate, the greatest, the prime, the leading, the foremost, but those don't all describe atoms and molecules. That's why we chose optimally. And for dissipative, we say resilient, successful, efficient. And for configuration, we've got whatever configuration it is, whether it's us or a process or a tool or a structure or Nebula, it's always an ODC, optimally dissipative configuration. Let me show you another example over here as we move to our atomizer. No, kitty, that's our pointer. So here we have our entropic model of the universe. And what this is meant to illustrate is that everything is indeed going towards disorder, whether it's a galaxy or a solar system. But we're going to notice that as they do, structures emerge. And we didn't invent this. There's a physicist who won a Nobel Prize in 1977, Ilya Prigogine, who proved that indeed structures spontaneously emerge when given the chance, so within their constraints. And the law states that when you have all of these atoms and molecules and there is a gradient to fill, so some potential energy, the universe finds the optimal way for that to configure itself. And again, that might have been a mouthful, but it is the key, it is the code, It is where life and energy are linked as to how and why they're here. And as we continue down the chain, galaxies form stars, and as the star is forming, planets emerge around them. And then within planets, sometimes we have the correct building blocks so that if there are enough gradients and if the system is stable enough, you start to get what we call life in dinosaurs and humans. And when humans are here in order to better survive themselves, because remember, if we didn't have things to break down, humans would not be here. And that's the gradient with which we've emerged. And then we have cell phones and cars also emerge from the humans. Cars and cell phones don't emerge merely from solar systems and galaxies. You have to go down the chain to see all these marvelous orders of structure. And to demonstrate, I've got a special treat for you guys today. So this is the atomizer. It's going to simulate what happens in the primordial soup when you've got all of these building blocks and molecules. And right now they look pretty random. And when we apply a driving force to it, you're going to see that we're going to form some molecules that have never been seen before. And the important things to remember here is that a final configuration will occur. It is absolutely impossible for us to predict exactly what it's going to look like right now. But when we're done with it, we're going to see that it was exactly what it's supposed to be, even though it was impossible to predict what it was going to be beforehand. And this was a simulation for the primordial soup of life. And what happens is that this is a very scaled down version. It's a very the head of a pin size of how many molecules there are. But imagine this happening in the entire surface of the planet and the atmosphere and inside the mantle over billions of years, well, a few 100 million for the first life. And then you start to have something like this occurring and something like this. Now, we couldn't have predicted that these would be the final configurations. And most of the time, this will do absolutely nothing. But if there was a gradient present where it's waiting and looking for something to kind of snap together and possibly form a configuration that maybe forms like a catalyst that allows that new energy and matter to flow better, then that's the configuration that the universe chooses. So now we start to see a human quality to the forces of the universe that are part of our formula. And when we talk about choosing the best configuration, so the argument for the maximum is a selection process, it's a choice. And so imagine a human building a bridge, let's say. They're not going to build any bridge randomly with all of the money in the world. We want to build it as efficiently as possible to get the job done while wasting the least amount of resources. And that's the intelligence, that's the best, and that's where we meet with the intelligence of the universe through ODC and find that when all of those atoms and molecules are swirling around together, that's when it's learning, experimenting, and adapting to the best, like we've just seen, configuration possible so that a new gradient might be tapped into for power and more efficiency. So that might have been quite a bit for a first look at the secret code. So thank you for joining me and Nebula in exploring the hidden code of life and energy. Say bye-bye, Nebula. No, no, no.